Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome back to the Hangin with Web Show. I'm GW Pomichter. Thank you so much for logging on or tuning in or clicking a link or hitting some button in social media. Something dragged you to the seedy part of town, and we're glad they came, right?
Yes.
Because we're going to tell you today, we are at Indie Bookfest in Orlando, Florida. We're hanging out with authors. We've been here all day long. It's been a great time. We're hanging out right now with author Barbara Cutrera. And Barbara is the author of 19 titles.
Yes.
And we're looking at this one. This is a contemporary romance, Brainstorm.
Yes.
Oh, see, behind the camera, they're all doing the hand thing with the cool. I don't know what that's all. They don't even do that when I walk in the room. I have no idea what's going on with that. So, all right, Barbara, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you
for
for
hanging out with
having
us.
me.
Okay,
Thank you.
19 titles.
19.
Wow, how long have you been writing professionally?
I have been publishing since, I think, 2013.
2013, okay.
I actually started writing about 20 years ago. I hadn't written anything since college, and one day, inspiration struck. I started writing, and I ended up writing my first fiction book.
I don't know how many people actually, authors start their sentence with "I hadn't written since college," but you see, I'm gonna lay that sentence right on our college professors. You overwrote us, so that we didn't even the ones of us who would become professional writers didn't write for 20 years, and then all of a sudden we were like, "That's it, I'm gonna do it."
Yes.
And so, what was your first?
My
book
first
published?
published book was actually not the first book I wrote.
Okay.
My first published book was a mystery called In a Manner of Speaking.
Okay.
And it is my only mystery to date, although I do have a lot of thriller elements in my romances and my other books. But that was my first published book, the first book I ever
Suspense is a
wrote.
great emotional hook.
Yes, it
For a
is.
reader, yeah.
And even in my fiction, which was the first book I ever wrote, ended up becoming a trilogy. And that was called Over, Under, Across, and Through.
Okay.
And there are mystery elements, there are thriller elements to all of my books, which people like that.
They
People
do.
really
They
like
they
it.
hooks them, and it draws them in.
Yes.
To it is easier, I think, for someone to suspend their disbelief in your universe
Definitely.
if they are looking for something. They feel like they're on a scavenger hunt. And so that suspense element really does, that thriller element.
And it's interesting that you say that, because this book in particular has a lot of thriller and suspense in it, even though it's contemporary romance. Because Gabriel, the male protagonist, he is looking for his missing sister, and he goes to Brooklyn, who is a social worker who has epilepsy, and her father has been missing since she was a child.
Oh,
so
wow.
she decides to help him out. So there is a mystery
this is
thriller
kinda
element. You're
next.
solving two mysteries within the romantic
And hijinks ensue.
Yes.
Because that's what happens in a writer's mind.
Because of course they fall in love. Of
Yes.
course, you know, they fall in
what
love.
else are they going to do? They're in the same book. They're spending time together for like 200 pages.
Exactly.
Sooner or later, you know. So, so you said you hadn't written since college. You then just woke up and you had an inspiration sparked.
Yes.
Have you always had an interest in writing?
Yes.
Or this just...
I've always written, since I was a young child, I've always been interested in reading and writing since I was very small. But as I said, once I got out of college, I got married, I had a child, I had life, you know, happen.
We had life.
And then one day, actually, I was at work and I was on my lunch break, and I just had this really strong scene come into my head, and I thought, I should write that down. And it turned into the first book I ever wrote.
That's
so
fantastic.
it was wonderful.
That is awesome.
It was
How
wonderful.
long between the first book that you published and then getting that first book that you wrote ready for publishing?
Let's see. I wrote the first book, I think, in 1999, and I waited to publish until about 2013.
Okay.
Mainly because I wanted to decide whether I wanted to be traditionally published, whether I wanted to do it independently, because at that time that was not popular.
No, and again, you also have to remember too, guys, in the 1990s, I started writing professionally in around '93.
Okay.
And back then, whether you were writing a short story, a poem, anything, independent publishing was not a thing.
No.
They had at that time what today we refer to as vanity publishing.
Yes.
Where you can go in and you can pay to have so many of your books printed, and and they sit in the garage. You have 500 copies of your book sitting in the garage. You have no idea how to get to a bookstore or a distributor of any kind. And so it wasn't an option for us. It really wasn't.
And I hate that term of vanity because it makes it sound like you're not any good. No one's going to, this is just for you. But now we have indie.
And back then it really was just for you because you didn't know how to sell it.
Right.
You knew how to write it, and you could probably get it edited pretty well.
Exactly.
And but you didn't know how to sell it to the world.
Right.
That was what the huge publishing companies were made for. And we all had query letters on our desks that were this, all the rejection letters that said, "Hey, thank you, but not this year. Maybe never," and you never knew. So, the advent of independent publishing and print on demand and these things made independent, creators, gave us the ability to get stories that maybe they're not commercially, huge.
Right.
And so somebody's not going to sink, hundreds of thousands of dollars into the promotion of it, but the story's good. And people want to read these stories. And, here we are, we're Indie Bookfest. Readers are coming in. Other writers are looking at each other's work. It's good work. It's people want to see it. And we have a media culture today that consumes, whether it's the written word or it's video or audio content, they are ravenous in their consumption. There was somewhere I posted online, someone had showed statistics where we are consuming more media in our day-to-day lives today than ever imaginable, even just 20 years ago.
And that's why I think it's important for people to branch out. I mean, I have my little YouTube channel, and it kind of just started it over the last couple of years, but when I do a new release, I do a video, and I've had readers say, "Oh, I love that. I love to see you with the book," and it just, that visual stimulates them, and then I give them a little synopsis, and then they can, that looks cool, that sounds interesting, so why not? So
with 19 titles out there since 2013 now, you have had an opportunity to really dive in really at the cusp of the beginning of the indie author, indie book movement. One of the greatest feelings I think I've ever felt is when a reader comes up and they've connected with a character.
Oh, yes.
And if you're doing a lot of these conferences and things like that, you get a chance to interact with readers a lot more. Best reader moment. What was the best moment?
The best reader moment was actually at an Indie Bookfest.
Okay.
Maybe 3 years ago, I had a woman come up just out of the blue. I was talking with somebody else, and she just came over and gave me a bear hug, and she said, "Thank you so much. You don't know how much of a difference you've made in my life." And she was just in tears.
Wow.
And I was just so grateful, and I carried that picture around on my phone because somebody took a picture of her doing that, and I was like, what an inspiration to me that I was able to give her that.
Life. Yeah,
exactly.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
Those are great moments. I think one of the best moments I've ever had on set was I was in the middle of an interview, and a reader came up with a copy of a book and asked if I would sign it, and they're usually pretty good about keeping the interview space an interview space. And but all of a sudden, Dina came running over and she said, "Would you sign this book?" And I said, "I'm in the middle of an interview." And she said, and I said, "Yes, I will. I just when we're done." And she said, "No, you don't understand. They didn't buy the book here. They brought it with them." And I sat there, and it sunk for a moment, and I went, "Somebody bought a book and brought it with them to this just so they could get it." Oh yeah, we're stopping. We're stopping everything right now because that moment doesn't happen that often. Those big hugs and those moments when, a lot of readers would say, "Well, I liked your book," and "Oh, when's the next one coming out?" But that moment when you get the bear hug and somebody says, "This really affected my life,"
or if it impacted you in any way. I had one reader who was very angry because she was reading the trilogy, the fiction trilogy, and she was so mad. She had read the third book, and she said, "I don't think that such and such should have gotten married. He needs to focus on his family." She was very, very, "You need to change that. You need to go back and rewrite it." And so those moments too, that you really got to them.
These are fictional characters. We want you to know these are fictional characters.
Yes, they are.
They will make good decisions and they will make bad decisions.
Exactly.
And it doesn't really affect anybody for real, but it affected you, and that's important. That's a great what a great moment.
Yes.
That's awesome. What's number 20? What's on the list? What's coming up?
Actually, I am working on, I have a 5-book series. I have 4 of the 5 books written. It is going to be a paranormal contemporary romance series.
Wow.
And
There's
I have
a lot going on in that sentence.
Yeah.
Paranormal, contemporary romance.
romance.
There's a lot
Yes.
going on. You need to go to the dictionary and look up all 3 of those words and then mush them together and go,
Exactly.
what? Yeah.
And I have the 4 of the 5 books written, so I'm working on book 5 because in this series, I want to have all 5 written and I want to
time them
release
out.
them very quickly one after another. Usually I space them out over a few months period
Um,
at least.
What's the average word count? What do you work like? This is
It's
more like a novella, or do you?
Well,
do
I
you
have
go-
some, I think the shortest book I've written probably had about 50,000 words. And then that can go anywhere up to 170,000. So I'm in that range. It just depends on the book because this series is actually, this is the Limitless series.
Okay.
So each book highlights a character with a disability. So they're all
Oh, wow.
romances.
That's fantastic.
But each one has someone with a different physical or emotional challenge. The last book was shorter than this. And it
Okay.
was about somebody who has von Willebrand's, which is the most common bleeding disorder in the world. But that
Which is, it's the most common one. I had no idea what
Nobody
she said.
knows that.
I had to watch her lips move. I had no idea what she said, but
it's von Willebrand
von
disease.
Willebrand disease. Okay.
Everybody thinks it's hemophilia, but it's not. And okay, if there's somebody out there who has a different opinion, but
It's the internet. They all have different
They all have
opinions.
different opinions.
7 billion of them, and they don't agree on anything.
Exactly, but that book did not require this length. So it was shorter, but the book before required something longer. So to me, it's all about what does the story require. She has epilepsy.
She has epilepsy,
She has
okay.
epilepsy.
And-
And then I've had one who has hearing loss. The first book, Sight Unseen, is actually my bestseller out of this series. And that's the wonderful thing is I have people worldwide. That's the great thing about the ebooks as well, because I get people from Greece, from the Netherlands, from all over. I would never be able to touch those people if I had done that
my
publishing.
favorite thing in the world is going through at the end and choosing the languages that
Yes.
you want the algorithms to translate, because you think to yourself, I don't speak those languages.
Right.
I could never do this if it wasn't for technology today. Now you said this is going to be part of a series that is part of characters with disabilities, varying
Correct.
disabilities. What
Correct.
drew you to telling those stories?
Actually, I'm visually impaired.
Okay.
So I have a form of macular degeneration. So I have no central vision. I only have peripheral vision.
Okay.
And for several years, I worked in rehabilitation. So I was a rehabilitation.
I felt really good about myself a minute ago because we were making eye contact the whole time. It wasn't until just
I
now
wasn't
that
really.
It doesn't really.
Sorry.
Didn't impact me until just now that she has actually seen everything on set except me.
Exactly.
And she did that very calculatedly by looking right at me. So you guys at home wish you could do that, don't you? And you can't.
Yeah, if I want to look directly at you, I
that's
just
right.
look at you.
Well-
I don't see your face, so you always look great.
See
You look
that?
wonderful.
Awesome. I always tell them at home the best way to make me look good is turn all the lights off. So that's the best way to make. So awesome.
So I was a rehabilitation counselor,
Okay.
and I decided I had already started writing, and I decided I can't do 2 full-time jobs anymore. I just can't. So I had to make a choice. So as much as I hated to leave the rehab career, I made that decision, and I'm so happy that I did because it's just so rewarding. The writing is so rewarding.
It's a wonderful moment when we're able to take that thing we're passionate about
Yes.
and do it for a living.
Yes.
Find someone to pay us to do it, which is awesome.
Yes.
And you got to take your work though and bring it here into your creativity.
Exactly.
And that's really kind of cool.
And that's what's inspired that series. And that's what inspired Sight Unseen, that first book, because the character is blind. And I started thinking, even though I'm visually impaired and I worked with the visually impaired, so many people have questions of, well, okay, how do blind people dream? How do they get dressed? And I thought, okay, somebody needs to write romances because people who have disabilities can be sexy too. Why not?
Yeah, well, the whole notion of the disability sometimes, and I think And we do this unintentionally, I think. We want to be empathetic for one another.
Right.
But as a result, sometimes you tend to see the disability before the person.
Exactly.
And it you know, whether they're being pushed in a wheelchair, and you see the wheelchair first, and then the person inside.
Right.
And this is a great way to say, look to other people. They love, they hate, they cry, all of these things that everybody else does every day.
Their children, their parents, their partners, their
everybody.
employees.
And you
Yes.
don't know. And it's wonderful that we're telling stories like that, because people need to be reminded that it's, you know, when somebody comes into the room, don't see the cane, don't see the chair, don't see the person.
Exactly.
And then the hardware. Then
Exactly.
the hardware is important because it's probably how they got in the room. But you have to see it. But but see the person that's there. It's an accessory. That's right. And you, okay. That card means we've been having too much fun.
Oh, okay.
So it's like one of those, we're in timeout cards or something. So we're going to say thank you to our partners and friends, our great friend Rick Shea over at Famous Faces and Funny, Space Coast Comics, Indie Originals, Josh Bauer at J. Bauer Art for all of this beautiful artwork that adorns a set. Embellish Effects, Foxwood Wine Company, because these chairs are really comfy. Thanks, guys. And we want to thank our friends over at Hearts Helping Others of Central Florida. Bea and her crew are taking care of families all over Central Florida, as well as our great friend Gene Turnbow at Krypton Radio. It's wonderful that I run out of breath saying all those names, because these are the people who are sharing our creative artists all over the World Wide Web. We really do appreciate them. We appreciate you, and we hope you'll share this video. Share it on your Facebook page, share it on your Twitter page. You can't share it on Instagram, I don't know what you can do, because I don't know all the social media stuff. But if you can do it, do it. Hit subscribe, come back over and over again. See who we're hanging with next. Awesome.
All right, thank you so much. Lovely to meet you.